Welcome everyone to this webinar on decoding differentiated instruction. We'll start the webinar by 5:25. 5:15 to 5:25, we have the pre-webinar presentation. Meanwhile, if you can introduce yourself in the chat window, it would be great. It will be help us to understand a lot about the participants. And I am Elizabeth Samuel. I work with the Firki team as a course designer. Today, I'll be helping you to understand more about this and moderate this webinar. Welcome Shivani to this webinar. In this pre-webinar presentation, you can see some details about how to operate Zoom. You can see that there is a mic. So click on the mic button to unmute and share your views. If you are not sharing your views, please make sure that you're on mute so that there is no additional disturbance. Click on the video button to switch on the video and to switch off the video. Please make sure that the video is off to avoid bandwidth issues. You can also type any questions that you have or any doubts that you have in the chat button. We will be collating everything and then using that and explain that at the end. So there is this button called raise hand. You can use that if you want to ask a question or share your thoughts in between. Feel free to type anything in the chat. Also, it would be great if you can introduce yourself in the chat box. So there is another button, thumbs up and thumbs down. So if you like and understand some content or any comment that someone has shared, you can click on the thumbs up button. If you need more clarity, you can click on the thumbs down button. After the webinar, to just understand a little bit more about the content that you have learned today, talk to people around you about what you have learned. So we remember the best when we keep sharing what we have learned. And also another way to learn better is by practice what we have learned. So please make sure that you go back to your classrooms and practice differentiation with your children. And if there is any doubts that you have even after the webinar, you can watch the recording of this webinar and notes on www.firki.co, or you can also watch that on the app. Another way also to continue learning is to attend the next Firki webinar. So you can get more details about this by signing up on www.firki.co. We will also be sharing what the next webinar is on and the other details by the end of this webinar. So we'll start this webinar in another 5-6 minutes. We have around 23 participants right now. So it would be great if you can introduce yourself in the chat box. Just share your name, what you do, where are you from. There will be a great opportunity for us to understand each other.
Hello.
Hi, yes.
Yeah, this side Muhammad Hammad Arshad. Muhammad Hammad Arshad, this side.
Where are you from? Welcome to this webinar. Where are you from?
Yeah, I am basically from Bareilly, and I am currently working as an executive trainer in Adult High, Bangalore.
Thank you so much for joining this webinar. Hi, Durga. Durga says hi. Christina says hi. Bhakti Sharma says hi. We have Rajesh Ravichandran joining us. He is a fellow from Chennai. We have Jeevan joining us. Hi, Jeevan. We have Nigamananda Patra joining us. Hello. Sunil Mitran says hi. Hi, Sunil.
नमस्कार रे धरे वाल्की ईश्वरदाय
Firki recently launched its Teachers of India campaign. Teachers of India is an initiative to recognize the contributions of the teaching community towards building a nation of capable learners and leaders. So if you are a teacher, we want to celebrate you. So please send in your story on the link visible on the screen. It will shortly be shared on the chat window as well. Yeah, we can see that Gomes have shared the link. So please make sure that you log into that and then share your stories. We will be starting this webinar shortly within 2 to 3 minutes. It would be great if all of us can introduce ourselves on the chat window. It's an opportunity for us to understand each other. My name is Elizabeth Samuel and I work with the Firki team as a course designer. So we have Makaran Zaid. Hi Makarans, welcome to this webinar. Hi Madiha, welcome to this webinar. We have Sabyasachi joining us. Welcome sir again to this webinar. Hello everyone, welcome to Firki's webinar on decoding differentiated instruction. So my name is Elizabeth Samuel. I'm a course designer on the Firki team and I'll help you navigate through the webinar today. Before we begin, we'll quickly go through a quick walkthrough of the Firki website. This is so that as teachers and educators, you're aware of the services the platform offers. In order to access the website, you will have to use your email ID and create an account on our website. This account is free to create and use. Firki website has three main offerings. The first one is the courses. So we offer teaching or pedagogy courses that are free of charge and easy to use. To register for different courses, you can click in the courses link on the top of the screen. The courses allow you to choose based on difficulty level and category. Please feel free to browse the different courses we have in our catalog using the search bar above. We have courses across categories and levels mentioned on the left-hand side. As you can see, the courses Getting Ready to Differentiate and Differentiation II are present under classroom instruction for level 2 courses. Feel free to browse through them at your own pace. Another thing that we have is a webinars page. This is also accessible from the top of the screen. On this page, you will find information about upcoming webinars. If you scroll down, you will also find a bunch of resources from our older webinars, including video recordings of the webinar itself, notes from the webinar, the presentation that the speaker used, and other resources on the topic covered. Please feel free to browse this section at your leisure after the webinar. The third thing that we have is a resources page, which is also found at the top left corner of your screen. This page houses and will house resources from several of our partner organizations, such as the British Council, Khan Academy, Story Viva by Pratham, and more. We are in the process of adding to this list, and you can easily filter resources by partner, grade, or standard you teach, the subject of instruction, etc. We hope you find value in using these resources in your practice as teachers and educators. Finally, you can find the Firki app on Play Store and can access these courses, webinar resources through your phone as well. So please download our app and stay connected to teaching and learning on the go. With that, let's move on to the webinar at hand today. Thank you for taking time to join us in this discussion. In designing this and other webinars through the year, the Firki team is hoping that we can disseminate meaningful knowledge and skills that can take us closer to a goal of improving quality of education in Indian classrooms. So let's start by introducing the speaker. So we have Rahul Gomes, who is leading this webinar today. He was a 2014 Pune Teach For India fellow. He then worked on the training and impact team at Teach For India, designing teacher training curriculum and modules. In the last 2 years, he has been working on the Firki team, designing the overall Firki curriculum and courses, including Getting Ready to Differentiate and Differentiation II. During this webinar, he'll be supported by the other members of the Firki course design team. Through this webinar, the course designers from the Firki team, including Mansi, Bala, Anu, and myself, will help you explore the theory behind differentiation and help you put this material into action in your classrooms. By the end of this webinar, participants will have a better understanding of the key terms that will help teacher differentiate on the basis of and design learning experiences for their students that helps cater to diverse student needs in the same classroom. So that brings us to the norms for the webinar today. For the first 70 minutes, the speaker and the Firki team will take you through a prepared presentation. We will use the last 20 minutes to take questions from you. Given the large audience that we're expecting today, please keep your video and mic off to reduce stress on the bandwidth. Unmute it only when our speakers are taking questions and comments. So to ask questions or clarify anything, please write it in the chat box. I will be there to curate your questions and comments throughout the webinar. We will take them collectively at the end of the webinar during the open space. We have Prerna from the implementation team who is taking notes, a summary of which will be circulated to you after the webinar. You will have multiple opportunities to interact with us throughout the call. Feel free to post questions in the chat window throughout the call, and we will try and get through as many questions as possible throughout the webinar and in the last 15 minutes as well. This webinar will be recorded and will be available on YouTube and Firki website soon. So this brings an end to my introduction. Thank you for sharing your patience. Thank you for your patience. Hope you have an interesting evening. Over to a speaker now. So I'm truly excited to understand this decoding differentiated instruction through this webinar. So I hand it over to Rahul.
Thank you, Ali. Welcome, guys, to our our webinar on decoding differentiated instruction. I'm just going to share screen. Ellie, will you let me know if you can see my screen? Okay. Um, okay. Before we begin, guys, would like to really simply start with a simple disclaimer. Um, this is the first in a series of course-based webinars that Firki is hoping to use to interact with our users. The hope is that our users who take our courses and learn theoretical concepts in pedagogy have an opportunity to engage with us, and together we can learn and decode pedagogical items. Another simple and quick caveat is that while we are not experts in the field, in this field, and not necessarily experts at differentiation, we've spent some time researching the material in order to design this course, and we are in this journey to learn and to explore together. So let's in this very interest, let's move right ahead. There are two important pieces that we'd like to start with before I jump into the norms for today. Since this is the first in a series of course-based webinars, we are seeking to see what works in this format and what can be improved. So to that end, we would highly appreciate it if at the end of this webinar, you are able to give us meaningful feedback through the feedback form that we share in the chat box. Okay, with that, enough disclaimers. Let's get started. Before we begin, I'd like to really quickly take us through a couple of norms. There are two primary norms that I have for the way we will engage with the material for today. Yeah. The first one is, as you can see, someone falling down, a panda falling down, and someone saying maybe you should give it another shot. The first norm we're going to talk through for today is if you get something wrong, just try again. Yeah. We cannot say that we will be experts at this at the very first go, but it does make sense to, as soon as we get something wrong, to try it again. That's the only way we will learn. The second thing is just jump in, right? Jump right into the task that we have at hand today. Take every opportunity you can to actually engage with the material. This is just so that we give ourselves the best opportunity to actually see what it would look like in our classrooms, what differentiation looks like in our classrooms, and how we can use it to our advantage. Okay. With these two norms, I'm going to remind us of these norms, especially if things get a little confusing. We are going to jump into our learning objectives for today. Today, we are going to engage in two primary objectives. The first one is to recap the key terms related to differentiated instruction. As a part of pre-work for this webinar, we requested our users, our participants, to kindly take two courses on the Firki platform, Getting Ready to Differentiate and Differentiation II. There are 7 key terms we are going to explore and recap today from those two courses, just as a way to build consensus before we move to the second objective, which is to design a differentiated lesson plan using differentiated product, process, or content. Okay. Okay, so let's start with our first objective for today. We'll recap the key terms related to differentiated instruction. We will do this via quiz. Okay. So Ellie, I hope you can help me. I'm going to put down question after question, and they're all multiple choice questions. So in the chat box, I'd like for you to share your thoughts on what you think is the answer. Okay. If you think the answer is A, put down A. If you think the answer is B, put down B. If you think the answer is C, put down C. If in a true or false question, put down T or F. Right? And when you do this, Ellie will let me know what are people saying, and we will take these questions one by one. Okay, so let's get started. The first question we are going to do is, what does readiness mean? Here are our 3 options. A, it refers to a student's knowledge and skill level regarding given content. Or B, it refers to topics, skills, or activities that pique a student's curiosity or inspire him or her. C, it refers to a student's preferred method of learning new information or skills, cultural and gender preferences, and to environmental factors that influence a student's learning. What does readiness mean? In the chat box, please put in whether you think it's A, B, or C.
We can see a few C's. few A's, A, C, again few A's and C's.
A,
One person said A, C, again A, C. It's a mix of A and C. Most of the responses are A and C. We have again more A's and C's.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Ellie. So basically, we've heard most people say it's either A or C. Readiness is technically A. It refers to a student, whether a student is ready to learn what the teacher is teaching today. So let's take a couple of really simple examples to explore this concept, right? So let's say we're learning history. I'm talking specifically right now about grade 6. The curriculum I'm going to use now is Maharashtra history curriculum. In grade 6, the order of chapters that students learn, they start with the Indus Valley civilization. They then move to the Vedic period before they learn about the Mauryan period, right? Readiness indicates, so if a student has to learn about the Mauryan period, right, that the way that they should remember the elements of the Vedic period, because the elements of culture in the Vedic period affect how religion plays out in the Mauryan period. But if students do not remember the Indus Valley civilization, it does not affect their readiness to learn about the Mauryan period. Yeah. So readiness is not scores that students have scored in their summative assessments, in their end of year assessments, final exams, term tests, unit tests. It is how ready are they to learn what is happening in the classroom right now. Can we, as teachers, diagnose what students need immediately before this to learn what we're teaching in the classroom now? Yeah, we're going to take one more quick example. If the teacher is going to teach 3-digit addition with carryover, to see if students are ready to learn 3-digit addition with carryover, the teacher needs to check if students have mastered 3-digit addition without carryover, 2-digit addition with carryover, 2-digit addition without carryover, and so forth. But if in our unit test, we have taken an assessment and we have included questions on multiplication or on geometry, then those students scoring 30% does not tell us if they are ready or not ready to learn about 3-digit addition with carryover. So a key part of readiness is knowing what skills and knowledge students have and whether they're ready to start learning what we're teaching in the classroom today. With that, we're going to jump into our second question. Yeah, I hope you're ready. The second question, congratulations to everyone who got A. We're going to jump into our second question. Yeah, what does interest mean? A, it is a way of putting students together in temporary arrangements that can last an hour, a week, or a month. These arrangements are made based on student readiness, interest, or learner profiles. It refers to topics, skills, or activities that pique a student's curiosity or inspire him or her. It refers to a student's preferred method of learning new information or skills, cultural, gender preferences, and to environmental factors that affect a student's learning.
We can see few B's, 2 C's, again more B's are coming in. C, again B, C, B. So most of them are saying either it's the topic of the skill or it's the student's preferred method of learning. It's a combination of both C and B.
Thank you, Ellie. So a lot of you are saying B. I saw D as well. Okay. Most responses now are coming in for B, and that's the right answer. Interest just refers to what does a student enjoy. If I was to ask any individual what interests them, it could be absolutely anything from painting to cooking to art, whatever it may be. And students are just the same. Topics, skills, or activities that pique a student's curiosity or inspire him or her or motivate him or her to learn is an example of what interest is. Yeah. That's a pretty straightforward one. So the answer to what is interest is B, right? Ready to move on to the next question. So far, we've covered readiness and interest, two key terms, right? We're going to move on really quickly. What does learner profile mean? A, it is a way of putting students together in temporary arrangements that can last an hour, week, or month. These arrangements are made based on student readiness, interest, or learner profiles. It refers to a student's knowledge and skill level regarding given content. Or C, it refers to a student's preferred method of learning new information or skills, cultural, gender preferences, and to environmental factors that influence a student's learning. Please put in your answers in the.
We have few C's coming as the answer. C, C, C. So here there is no other option of A and B. Most of them are C's. Again, more C. There's one A. More C's. A.
Okay, thank you guys. You can pat yourselves on the back. Most of you got it 100% right. A learner profile, the correct answer is C. A learner profile refers to a student's preferred method of learning new information or skills, or it refers to the cultural gender preferences and to environmental factors that influence a student's learning. There's a lot of terms for a very simple key learning. What learner profile could mean and what environmental factors could mean are simple. Some people prefer to learn whilst in a cool environment. Others prefer to learn while the temperature around them is slightly warm. Some people prefer to learn to work independently. Others prefer to work in groups. Some people prefer to can work in noisy environments. Others absolutely need silence to work in. Right? Environmental factors are ones such as those. Skills, preferred methods to learning new information. Students could prefer or enjoy reading material. They could enjoy being a part of different activities, etc. Cultural and gender preferences also come up. Are we exposing or do our students have enough opportunity to engage with material that looks and sounds like them? So if our students most of our students happen to be in India, in which case our texts are the books we are reading to our kids also from an Indian context? Do they have Indian students in them? Do our texts have enough girl students in them so that our girl students also see enough representation of girls in the text they are reading? Those are elements of learner profile as well. Most of you got C correct. Great job. We've covered three key terms: readiness, interest, learner profile. We're now going to cover our next key term. I hope you're ready for the next question. The next question is sorry, before the next question, we'll just quickly recap. So we differentiate by readiness, interest, and learner profiles for very simple reasons. By taking readiness into account, if we start teaching according to where our students have stopped learning, where their skills and knowledge has stopped, then we get a chance to, the students get a chance to grow if the tasks are close to their readiness. If we know exactly that they cannot do two-digit addition or addition of two digits with carryover, we can support them very closely. And they have a better chance to grow than if we teach three digits with addition to all students. By taking interests into account and we include opportunities for students to engage in things that they like, students are passionate or motivated about the topic or task at hand. And by taking learner profile into account, students are efficient because the task encourages them to work in a manner that they prefer. When you give a student a simple choice, such as you can choose to work independently or in groups, students are efficient because they know that they can work in a way that they prefer, and work gets done in an efficient manner. We do a version of all three to ensure the students have a chance to grow, that they're motivated and they're efficient. Quick, let's move on to our next key term. The next key term we're going to cover is through a true and false question. In the chat window, put down T or F. Flexible grouping is a way of putting students together in temporary arrangements that can last an hour, a week, or a month. Looking forward to your responses.
We can see a few truths. I mean, most of them are true. There is one false. Many truths, and then again another one false. Truths, true, true.
Thank you, Ellie. yeah, I mean, again, once again, guys, you've clearly done the course, and you clearly have found value in it, because yes, flexible grouping is literally the way the students are put together in temporary arrangements that can last an hour, a week, or a month. The reason why we call this flexible grouping is we do not group students for the duration of an entire year. So looking, if very often what we tend to think of differentiation, what we tend to do is we tend to take students summative assessments, unit assessment data, unit test, or threefold, right? Students know when you put them in buckets and you keep them for the entire, students are very perceptive. They can tell very clearly what the teacher's perception of their abilities are. Also, we discussed readiness. Just because a student got some concepts incorrect in their summative assessment, in their unit test or their term test, doesn't mean they can't learn the next chapter. They might be ready to learn the next chapter, right? Therefore, we group students flexibly on a lesson by lesson basis. We can also group students on a weekly basis if the topic we're covering for the entire week, or for a month or a unit if is a specific project that we're working on, right? There is another key element here about flexible grouping. We can group if you're taking readiness into account, right? We're taking all students who can do 2-digit plus 2-digit addition without carryover together into one bucket, 2-digit plus 2-digit with carryover in one bucket, and 3-digit plus 3-digit without carryover in a third bucket. If that is the case, right? We can group students flexibly, homogeneously. That means all the students together who are similar, or we can take one student from each bucket and make a heterogeneous group. So there are two ways we can group students based on readiness, interest, and learner profile. We can group like students in the same group homogeneously, or unlike students together, students from different readiness, different interests, or different learner profiles together in the same group for heterogeneous groups. Yeah. Great. We've got another one last question that we're going to cover now. I hope you're ready. Match the following. One, so how I would request you to do it is in the chat box, put one and whether A, B, or C matches to one, two and whether A, B, or C matches to two, and three whether A, B, or C matches to three. I'll quickly read them out to you. You can, if you've read this fast enough, please start putting your answers in the chat. One, differentiating content. Two, differentiating process. Three, differentiating product. A is providing different groups different ways to demonstrate learning. B is offering different curriculum to different groups to learn the same concept or skill. C is when we teach different groups differently based on their needs. Please guys start populating your answers in the chat window.
We have 1B, 2A. We also have 1C. We have 3A, 3C. 1C, 2A, 3C. 1B, 2A, 3C. 1B, 2C, 3A. 1B, 2A, 3C.
Thank you, Ellie. So as we can see, there are clearly a large number of different options. We're now beginning to see a group of similar options. People are saying 1B largely, sorry, yeah, 1B, 2A, and 3C. Let's quickly look at what differentiating content, process, and product is. Let's talk initially about differentiating content. We differentiate content when we have our groups that we've grouped flexibly, homogeneously, or heterogeneously on the basis of readiness, interest, or learner profile. And we offer them different curriculum to different groups to teach the same concept or skill, right? So the same objective or the same topic, but we're using different maybe reading material or different ways to cover the same objective. That is an example of differentiating content, right? Then, so one is B. All those who got that right, give yourselves a nice pat on the back. Number two is differentiating process. Differentiating process is when we teach different groups differently based on their needs. So in the way in which the teacher supports students might look different. and that is an example of differentiating process. And finally, we've got differentiating product, which is 3 is A. It's providing different groups different ways to demonstrate learning. Can the students at the end show a different way to show that what they have learned? All those of you who got 1B, 2C, and 3A right, 3 out of 3, that's great. Give yourselves a pat on the back. You've done a great job. We're ready to now move into a quick recap of the 5 big questions that we've covered. Yeah. Let's do a quick summary of what we've recapped. Okay. So we started by looking at 3 key concepts of readiness, interest, and learner profile. Whether students are ready to learn this topic is readiness. What students are interested by is interest, and how students prefer to learn and the environment around them, cultural elements, etc., is learner profile. We use this information to put students into flexible groups. Either you can group students on the basis of readiness, or you can group students on the basis of interest, or you can group students on the basis of learner profile. A teacher makes that decision. A teacher can look at an objective, can look at a chapter, can look at a topic and say, for this topic, I would like to use readiness or interest or learner profile. An important thing to keep in mind is there is no right or wrong answer. These are decisions made by the teacher based on their classroom situations. Also, a teacher will take the best call he or she can in that moment. And if that is not the best way for the students to learn, the teacher will learn and do differentiation or group students differently in the next lesson. Flexible grouping can be broken into 2 parts. So you can group students either heterogeneously, which means students of different readiness in the same group, or this way it's a great opportunity for different students to support each other, and students to and the students to rely not only on the teacher to her support, but other students within the group for support. Or you can group students of different interests together just to bring different perspectives to the group, or students of different learner profiles together, just so that students, again, this is not very often done, but it just gives students an opportunity to get to know other people. Finally, you've got homogeneous flexible grouping. Again, you can group students of similar readiness together. All students who are capable, who are ready to do 2-digit plus 2-digit addition without with carryover together in one group, they are grouped homogeneously. All students who can do 3-digit plus 3-digit without carryover together in the same group, they're the same, they're like students, so they're all together homogeneously. And all students who can do 3-digit plus 3-digit without carryover in the same group. Right? Interest is all students who enjoy a particular activity, the same activity, painting, go to the same group. All students who want to display their learning through art can go to that same group, or who want to display their learning via a skit or a report can go to the same group. If you're putting students who are interested in the same things together, it's homogeneous grouping. Similarly for learner profile, all students who prefer a quiet environment can use that corner of the classroom where it will be quiet, and all students who would like to discuss and work in groups can be in this other corner of the classroom. Yeah. And once we've got our homogeneous or heterogeneous groups, we will then look at whether we should differentiate content. That means use different curriculum pieces or different ways to teach the same objective. This could be different texts. This could be different materials, etc. Right? Different ways of engaging with the material, etc. Or differentiated process. The support the teacher provides. Students A go to that station to do a particular task. Students B go to that station. Students group C goes to the 3rd station to do a different task. Differentiated product is where at the end students show their learning differently. So maybe group A will can choose to, so between the groups, group A will work on showing their learning via a report. Group B will show their learning via a letter to the editor, and group C will show their learning via a perhaps an article in the newspaper. Right? Those are 3 different products that students can choose for themselves. It can be based on interest, right? And it's a good opportunity to differentiate product while still focusing on the same content and the same objective. Yeah. So with that, we've come to the end of our summary and our recap for our session. We are just going to take a minute and pause before we move into our next task. Our next task is really, really interesting, and I'm really excited to introduce you to our next task. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be working with the different members of the Firki team on on a specific task that helps us to design our own lesson, keeping these pieces in mind. Before we jump into that, there are two important points I'd like to remind you of. The first one is that every student is unique, guys. When we treat the full class as a single system without treating them as though they have no differences and no variance, we tend to neglect individual students. We tend to neglect their abilities, their strengths, their learning profiles, their interests, their personalities, all of which makes them unique and makes them special, right? By giving students options, simple options that allow them to leverage their interests, that allow them to leverage their learner profile, we know that they will be more efficient, they will be motivated, passionate to learn, and to own their own learning. Additionally, it also drives efficiency in their run. Yeah. The second and another important key point is that people change. Yeah. We've all changed over time. Students change too. Very often, students change quicker than us adults because students have such a short-lived experience. Every new day brings something brand new to them, and what they enjoyed yesterday they might not like today, and what they did not like yesterday they might like today. Additionally, their readiness changes as well. So their readiness might change over time. Their interests definitely change over time, and their learner profiles also evolve over time, right? It also changes with reflection. It changes with more experience they have. Just the newer experiences they go through as students, the newer milestones they hit in their development, etc. So be wary of that before you put students in groups. When these aspects of their readiness, interests, or learner profiles change with time, they don't fit into those groups as well towards like a middle of the year or the end of the year, which is why flexible grouping is one of the key areas of differentiating effectively as teachers. Yeah. With that, we've come to the end of our recap and we are ready to jump into our exciting activity. It was great fun to design this activity for you guys. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to be putting you now, my colleague Ashwath is going to put you into four groups, breakout rooms with each member of the course design team. And in this room, you will be given two pieces of information. The first one is a data packet that will include student readiness, interests, and learner profiles. The second one is a set of objectives across subject areas and grades, right? Choose any objective as a group and design a lesson plan for your students mentioned in the data packet. It's a good opportunity to actually practice this, to see how whether you want to group students by readiness, interest, or learner profile, whether you want to group students flexibly, homogenously, or heterogeneously, and then whether you want to differentiate product, process, or content, right? This is a really interesting activity, and I cannot wait to turn this over to my team. Before that, I'm just going to show you a few examples of the objectives you have available to you. These are objectives across a variety of standards and grades and a variety of subject areas. We've got math, we've got English, we've got social studies across different grades as well, right? So for this, I'd request request my colleague Ashwath to kindly put us into breakout rooms now. Four of them, please, Ashwath.
We also have the objectives in the chat box.
ಇರ್ದ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಯ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ನಾ ತಿನ್ನಿ அன்மியூட் எல்லாருமே மியூட் தம்மா பண்ணி வச்சிராங்க
யூ ஆர் மியூட்டட் பை ஹோஸ்ட்னு கொடுத்துருக்கதுல
ஹலோ சரளா மேம், நான் வந்து உங்களை ஒரு குரூப்ல அசைன் பண்ணா நீங்க அந்த ரிக்வெஸ்ட் அக்செப்ட் பண்ணா டிஸ்கஷன்ல பார்ட்டிசிபேட் பண்ண முடியும்.
ஓகே
சரியா? ஸோ நீங்க ஒரு வாட்டி கனெக்ட் பண்ணுங்க, நான் உங்களை குரூப்ல அசைன் பண்றீங்க, நீங்க ஜாயின் பண்ணுங்க.
ஓகே
Okay. I believe all groups are back. Ellie, if you're here, let me know. Bala, if you're here, let me know. Mansi, if you're here, let me know. Anu, if you're here, let me know. I hope this was an interesting task for you, and it was also a good opportunity to learn. Bala, Mansi, Mansi Shah and Mansi both have responded. So that's very great. Okay, so I hope it was a really interesting task for you. We're just gonna move on. We've done two things so far. We've recapped 7 key terms: readiness, interest, learner profile. We said we know this material, we know what they mean, and we also know how we can group students flexibly, either similar students together homogeneously or unlike students together heterogeneously, and then use that to differentiate product process content. Yeah. Within this activity, I want to quickly facilitate a quick opportunity for people to reflect. Let me open this out to the group. Two very simple questions. What was easy and why? What was difficult and why? We'll take a couple of responses, and then we'll move into the question section of this webinar. What was easy about the task? Why? And what was not so easy? What was difficult and why? Nothing was easy. Okay. Kavi, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? I hope you still jumped in. I hope you remember our norms, and I hope you still jumped in and still tried, even though it may not have been super easy. It was easy to form the homogeneous group depending on the interest. Okay. Choosing objectives was easy. Okay. Easy was to think about homogeneous and heterogeneous. Differentiating between process and content was easy. Difficult was to form heterogeneous groups. Okay. Yes, I mean, none of this is going to be super easy in the first go. Remember, you're just learning the skill for
whatever the task we give for homogeneous, it will be easy for them.
Okay. And for heterogeneous will not be easy. Is that what you're saying? Red me.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Working on learner profile will be time consuming. Okay, thank you very much, Kunjan. Dividing them in groups was difficult. How to teach was easy. Yes, that is always the case. The ideas for teaching are a dime a dozen. The ways to put them into the groups, the multiple permutations, combinations often becomes a little difficult. It was difficult to cater to heterogeneous group fully. That's interesting. Okay, thank you for responding. I'm hearing similar things. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open it out to questions, right? So we've got about, let's say 15 to 17 minutes to take some questions that you might have. Any question, again, I cannot guarantee that you will get an answer here from me. If I cannot answer it, I promise to make a note of it, go back, look it up myself, and reach out to you in an email. But I'd still strongly encourage you to share some things that you found easy and difficult, and to also increase, input some questions that you might have. If I can, we'll take them now. Yeah. Also, please feel free to respond to each other's questions with your thoughts and ideas, especially if you've understood this material and you've been doing this already. Okay. So I've got a couple of questions here. Ellie, do you want to just pull them up?
Yeah.
I'm going to find it difficult to
Yeah,
go one by one.
yeah, perfect. I'll start with one question. So Arzu is saying, I'm still confused between process and product, as I feel a change in process is likely to result in a change in product. So could you please share some examples for this process and product?
Thank you very much. So process and product, I mean, so technically differentiation is not fixed. There are no fixed boundaries for differentiation. In the same lesson, you can differentiate process and product simultaneously. The problem with doing that, and it's not a problem, but the difficulty in doing that is it's difficult to manage the logistics of that. There are a number of different things to take care of. To think of how you're going to do the process for each group and what products you want from different groups. That's the problem. So it's possible to have a lesson with both. The differences in that is very simple, right? So if you're teaching all students the same content, the same objective, everyone's learning the same objective, the same methods, but different, but the amount of support you give to different students looks different. Let me give you an example. Let's say we're all doing again, we'll come back to my favorite objective, the addition of three-digit numbers with carryover. Right? So if we're talking about this particular objective, let's say by the end of the lesson, all students have to answer a worksheet that has three-digit addition plus three-digit addition with carryover. All students have to answer the same worksheet. But during the lesson, different students are in different places. Some students are ready to immediately jump into addition of three-digit numbers with carryover. Some students are not ready. Some students need to work on two-digit plus two-digit with carryover. So the teacher can then give automatic worksheets to students on three-digit plus three-digit carryover, that particular group, and say, work on your own. I'll come and support you later. The teacher can be physically present with the group for like 60 to 80% of the lesson time. If it's a 30-minute lesson, spend 20 minutes of the lesson with the group that needs help with two-digit plus two-digit carryover, two-digit addition plus with carryover. Right? By the end of and then the teacher will also teach them three-digit plus three-digit lessons with carryover. Yeah. So now what we've got here is the teacher is taking this group 2, which is not fully ready, two-digit plus two-digit with carryover, three-digit plus three-digit without carryover, and three-digit plus three-digit with carryover, while the other group, which is already ready to start on three-digit plus with carryover, has already started. The process of support looks different, but at the end, everyone has to answer three-digit plus three-digit carryover. That's how the process can look different, but the product will still be the same for all parties. Yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Another question is, how practical is this in every lesson? Is it possible to do this in every lesson, logistics and everything?
A key thing to keep in mind is it doesn't need to be done in every lesson. The point of differentiation is our students start with a massive gap. The students who are doing well do very well. Students who do not do super well do very poorly. To bridge this gap, if we differentiate for students and based on the readiness, right, we will be able to support them quicker to get into their targets. Now, this doesn't mean every lesson needs to be differentiated, but it means where the gap is large, in a topic the gap is large, a differentiated lesson might make more sense. Additionally, in a normal lesson, which the gap is not so large, the topic is some normal topics that you're going to cover, but the gap is not so large, maybe it makes sense to differentiate on the basis of interest, just to give students an opportunity to engage in something that they like and motivate them. Right? So those, for example, if you're talking about profit and loss, this is a very simple, very, very rudimentary choice you're giving your students. You're talking about profit and loss. You're teaching students profit and loss. But within profit and loss, the gap is not very large. So you can differentiate on the basis of interest. You can give, let's say some students prefer sports, some students prefer art, some students prefer something. The task can be related to sports, art, painting, whatever it may be. It could just be questions similar to that, or even just giving students an option. Do you want to do this task or these two other tasks? And this is a good opportunity for students to even when their gap is not large, to just to find motivation and because they're making a choice for their own selves, they take ownership of their learning. It's like, I made the choice, I must justify why I'm here. Right? It's just a great way to incentivize learning.
Another question is, if you use differentiated product, what about the final assessment considering the education system we are in? Yeah, so we're saying we can differentiate by product, but then what about the final assessment considering the education system we are in?
Okay, so again, there is a time frame. No one's expecting you to only give the students who are not ready easier worksheets for the rest of the year or for the rest of their schooling ability. The point is, if we give them worksheets that are closer to the readiness level, they're able to catch up quicker. The gap shrinks and the ability for them to access content or material at their level or their grade level, their actual material from their textbooks, is faster. And they're more likely to achieve, to be able to write the same assessments as every one of their peers by the end, if we help them close that gap quicker. So again, this is a theoretical question. This is a existential question in a sense. I don't have a right answer for this. This is just my take on this. I've seen differentiation work in my classroom as well. It's just and in classrooms across the country in my work in the last few years, and I think there's definite merit in giving students a chance to at least access material closer to where they are right now, and then use it as a stepping stone to consistently build until they are able to catch up with everybody in the lesson.
There are a few questions generally about data and collecting data. So is there an average time interval in which we should collect data? What would you suggest?
Again, this is not the right answer because there are multiple right answers. However, my favorite way of talking about the best way to collect best time to collect data is all the time. And now I'm not saying you have to do tests for your students all the time. No, I'm saying there are multiple ways to gather how your students have learned material. Um, so a simple strategy that will tell you. So for example, again, I'm going to go back to my favorite objective just because it's just an easy way to explain things, right? So 3-digit plus 3-digit addition. At the beginning of the class, if you've not conducted an assessment in the previous week or the previous lesson, and you don't know where students are with regard to their ability to add 2-digit plus 2-digit with carryover, just start the lesson with a simple question that is 43 plus 68 on the board. Everyone has to answer that on a small sheet of paper or their board, and then everyone raises it up. You will find it easy to see who's got that material and who doesn't. And then you can say, okay, all students who got this answer correct will work here. I will support you more. And all students who haven't will work on this side. You can start working on this worksheet already. Again, data collection, I'm not so worried about the data collection. I'm hoping teachers will be able to diagnose the correct prerequisite. So for example, for squares and square roots, I hope teachers are not necessarily starting with looking at addition. The very first thing with square roots might be multiplication and division. And depends on square roots of what kinds of numbers, how many digit numbers, and therefore what level of multiplication and division students need to know. Can you diagnose that correctly? Because if you're able to diagnose that correctly, you will be able to then test the correct things, and you'll consistently do it, whether it's the end of a lesson or simple strategies like I just showed you, which is called boards up. I hope that's helpful.
Please feel free to ask any questions in the chat box. Meanwhile, we had some questions in the survey. So I'll just ask you questions from that. One question is how to implement differentiator instructions in a multi-level classroom.
Yeah, so I think a key part of teaching in a developing nation and in India is that there is massive disparity in classrooms. And I think there is always going to be multi-level students at multiple levels in the same classroom. The purpose of differentiation, especially if you're doing it by readiness, is to be able to pitch content at the right readiness for students. And hopefully the gap will enable students to will keep closing down. And I've said this before, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but this is our students' best shot to make up the disparity. I hope that's it.
Another question is, how do we manage this large group versus small group?
Yeah, so the question that happened to come up was, I teach in a classroom of 100 students. I teach in a classroom of 80 students. It is just so difficult very often to do that. I think there are a couple of things, right? So firstly, there is no reason that you need to make it very high stakes. I always thought that when you make something very high stakes, it just becomes you blame yourself very easily when you fail. So always a good chance to start experimenting with differentiation, but also it's a great opportunity to leverage students in your classroom. Maybe a large chunk of your students might have your students are very unique. We've discussed this, right? All students are unique. Every child is unique, right? And therefore you can leverage students who have interests and they're good at their interests to support other students. You can leverage students who are highly ready to support other students, and then your support can be targeted to specific groups for that lesson, right? So again, don't think of it as in every lesson, my class of 100 students, I have to support all 100 students. Over the duration of a week, can I provide support to all groups? While other groups work independently on meaningful tasks that help them learn. I also just read Sabyasachi's comment on multi-ability classrooms, and I genuinely couldn't have put that better. It's a pleasure to teach in that classroom because it really brings the spirit of teaching alive, and I've always enjoyed that. It's just a wonderful, wonderful experience, and yes, it makes flipped classrooms a reality. And in addition, differentiation is also really fun to do once we get the hang of it, and once you feel comfortable, it's really fun to do. Hope that's helpful.
Kavi, I hope that answered your question also about managing differentiation in large classrooms if logistics can't be managed. If it's not clear, please mention your question. Another question is how to prepare a differentiated worksheet. Do you have any suggestions on that?
How to prepare a differentiated worksheet. So to be very honest, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Teachers and there are multiple teachers with blogs online, multiple teachers for every content area, every subject, every topic. You will have teachers or experts in designing curriculum have made a number of these materials. A good place to start is just to put down your topic, and to put down your the topic and the specific and say differentiated worksheet, and you'll get that. That's just one. Another thing is just look at your, if you're doing it on the basis of readiness, then again, just look at your data and say, what, if I'm looking at group 1, group 2, and group 3, what can they start with? So what are the first few questions my students should be able to do? Then when I support them, what are the next set of questions they will be able to do? And by the end, what should they be able to do? Just those sorts of pieces are really interesting as well. Differentiated worksheets, I believe, are just a tool. The important pieces are if you get differentiated content, product process, and by readiness, interest, learner profile right, and you flexibly group students well, worksheets are just a tool extension of your support.
Another question is, can I get a few examples of differentiating through content? Some more examples.
Okay, so firstly, I strongly urge you to take the course that we've designed. It's the course Differentiation 2 has a number of examples of differentiating content. That would be really helpful. Off the top of my head right now, I mean, for specific objectives, I'm going to struggle, but yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to table this for now. I will strongly recommend, who asked this question? Not sure who asked this question, but please definitely, yeah, Ashwath has put down the link to Differentiation 2. Please go ahead and register for the course and take it. I worked to include as many examples in that as possible that I just can't remember off the top of my head right now, and I'm not memorized. So also, if you just Google differentiated content, you'll get a ton of examples that will be helpful. If you can't find any, feel free to reach out to me. I'll leave my email ID in the chat box at the end of this webinar, and I will be happy to take any and all questions in a few days. Yeah.
We have around 5 more minutes, so feel free to type in any questions that you have. One more question that we have is, what about the schools who do not have multi-ability classrooms?
I'm a little confused about the question. What is a multi-ability classroom? You mean students who are not at multi-levels, who are, the gap is not large?
Gunjan is saying yes.
I mean, differentiation is a great tool because basically when I said the gap is large, it works when you're differentiating by readiness. It's a great tool to use. However, you can always differentiate by interest. If the gap isn't large and the readiness isn't a problem, if the readiness isn't varied, then differentiate by interest, give students greater opportunities to engage with material that they enjoy. Also, learner profiles, just great ways to do that. Also, if you go on even if you're teaching a classroom that is not very diverse in its readiness levels, using strategies like learning contracts, tic-tac-toe that we have on the course Differentiation 2, you'll have a great opportunity to see just how you can make your lesson super engaging and provide opportunities for students to engage with their interests by differentiating content, not on the basis of readiness, but on the basis of interest. I hope that's helpful, Gunjan.
We'll have one last question. So what does differentiation look like in a subject learning teaching, maybe in a primary classroom versus secondary classroom?
Okay, so yeah, I remember seeing this in the form. Two parts stand out to me. Different grades, what does it look like, and different subjects, what does it look like? So the decision tree we put up today, right? The very simple decision tree today that you, as long as you're thinking about the right things, differentiation is a perfect pedagogical tool in that sense. It lends itself super well to teaching math and to teaching something as different to math as woodworking. right? If you know the readiness of someone to start carving wood, you can support them at that level as well. So any subject area, any grade, any standard of instruction, differentiation is a great tool. As long as you're gathering data on like student readiness, student interest, student learner profiles, you can provide varied opportunities for students to learn. Yeah, and give them a great chance to like engage with material that would otherwise be delivered just standing and delivering, right? So yeah, I hope that's helpful. Again, just trying to bring a different perspective.
That brings us to the end of this webinar. So we have mentioned this feedback from here. Please take 2 minutes to share your feedback on this webinar. And I would like to thank Rahul, Bala, Anu, and Mansi for being generous with their time and facilitating this. Rahul, can you share your thoughts about this webinar? Overall, how did you feel? Any feedback on this?
So I don't know if you noticed, but I was flitting between the groups and there were some interesting conversations going on, and it was very interesting to provoke these conversations. I hope it was helpful. A couple of things that I'm really thinking about, right, is I'm thinking about how we can make these sort of webinars accessible to a number of users who've taken our courses, just to give them an opportunity to experience blended learning a little varied way. So you've taken our courses, can we have topic discussions and webinars like this on more of our courses like this, and a great way for us to come together and learn together. No one's an expert here. We're all just learning together. And I'm also really excited to see the feedback we receive, because it will help us to strengthen the next webinar that we design. So I strongly urge you guys to please take that link, fill it up, just spend like 3 minutes or 4 minutes, be as effusive as you can, write as much as you can, tell us what went well, what are things you'd like to keep in the next course-based webinar, what are things you'd like us to change a little bit. We promise to read it all and take it seriously, and help us to grow and improve this format a little bit, given that it's our first one.
Thank you so much, Rahul. If you have any further questions, all the participants, any questions or thoughts on the material covered today, we request you to kindly write to us at rahul.gomes@teachforindia.org. We have mentioned that in the chat box, the email ID. We will respond to your questions within next few working days. Our next webinar is scheduled to take place on the 5th of February on Safe Journeys, a guide to comprehensive sexuality education for adolescents. This webinar will be conducted by the Prior's Health Group. So keep looking for Firki emails in your inboxes for information on this upcoming webinar. Thank you so much for participating in this webinar. Please share your feedback. We have shared the feedback link here. Thank you and good evening.